Welcome back, YouTubers. Well, today's project, we're fully into the Massey Ferguson 1135 here. Probably a video or two back here, somewhere here, you have to look back here, I showed you the tractor and explained that I had to pull the hydraulic pump out of it to do a repair. So I got, with the help of my older brother, he came over the other day and gave me a hand, and we got this pump out of this tractor. Without further ado, we'll get into it, so here we go. Follow the trail of disassembled parts and scattered bolts and you name it, and there once was a hydraulic pump. Now sitting on the tailgate of the truck there, I have to get to and get tore apart. So anyways, gives you an idea what you got to get into when you start doing major repairs on equipment. So yeah, in all its greasy goodness. So anyways, I'll meet you folks over at the tailgate there, and we're gonna get on that pump here. I got to get it apart and change out a couple of O-rings and seals on it, and get it ready to drop back in here, because I got to keep moving here. Time is ticking and haying season is slipping away, so got to get at it here. So okay folks, well, this is our pump unit out of the 1135 Massey here. So anyways, these are a radial piston pump, and they're what I believe, well, they have 8 actuating pistons all the way around, so it's a 8 piston pump. Very high output pump, very robust design, been around for obviously a long time. They were used in the 1135, 1105, 1155 tractors, and prior to that they were used in the 1100 and 1100 series Massey Fergusons, dating back to the early 60s all the way up into late 70s, and I don't know if they carried on into the later 2700 series and 2800 series tractors. I don't know if they did or not. So, but anyways, that's the time frame that they used these pumps in. They're a 4 bolt mount. They got 2 on each side here, ear flanges that bolt into the front casting of the tractor that I just showed you there a little while ago. This is the back pressure regulating plate here. This is your actuating piston that gets the pump excited, so to speak, or when you demand oil flow. This is what triggers the pump when they have a small lift pump in the transmission that pushes oil that feeds this one, and then when it demands full load for whatever work task you're doing, whether it be with the remotes or your power steering or whatever, this actuating valve in here kicks in and makes the pump. This works in conjunction with a combining valve up on the firewall. That's what actually triggers it, but this is what controls the pump and makes it pump here. So this is bolted down here to, or cast, I shouldn't say bolted down, it's casted into this rear main pump pressure plate here. And this is where my leak is, over here, right in between the two pump bodies here. So what I'm going to do is pull these, there's four bolts here that I've already broke them loose. I'm going to get them off here right away and lift this off, and I have to be careful. In behind here there's a plunger cup, a couple of keepers, and I know there's a double spring, like a spring inside of a spring here. So yeah, gotta watch, and don't have stuff rolling and going all over the place. So I've got some rags here I'm gonna set down. I put some cardboard down here on the tailgate because this is going to be a flood of oil when I open this up, because this sucker still got oil in it. I tried draining it the best I can, but you know, we all know how that goes when you try and take stuff apart like that. It seems like it's always an extra cup of oil inside of there. When you open them, they dump all over the place, no matter how well you try to drain them. So anyways, we'll get you back here in a second when I'll set the camera up, and then I'll bring you back here when I pull the bolts and try and lift this plate off, and we'll see what we get into here. Okay, like I say, I previously got this cracked loose here, so to speak, here. We're going to see how this goes here. I don't know. I don't think those springs are strong enough to push this pump plate up or whatever. They're just small little regulating springs here. So we'll see how this plays out here. I'm going to lay out a couple of rags here before I get too far here, because we're probably going to have a flood of oil here going to come out of that thing. Maybe, I don't know. Who knows? This is the back side of the pump, obviously. That would go, well, would be the front of the pump, but the actual input shaft side is down, and the shaft and the drive spline on this thing actually slide out of the pump. It's a moving shaft with a drive flange that's designed to back it up into the pump so you can drop your fan belts in and out when you got to do a service work on the tractor. An okay design or idea. I mean, it's like not a flex couplers per se. It's a round disc drive, and it's got like steel inserts inside a rubber bushing type drive. Now I will say these pumps, they're pretty specific on the other side here. This side, the bolts are just common grade 5 bolts. They're 3 bar stamp, which means they're grade 5 bolts. On the other side, they're actually there's only 4 on this side, and there's 8 bolts on the opposite side that hold all the piston pump assembly in there. And those are actually, each and every bolt has a ping mark on the head corresponding to a pin mark starting from 1 going all the way to 8, like 1, you know, through the sequence. And each bolt has to go to each hole for they retain each of these rotary pistons in here. So it's pretty specific. I mean, you're dealing with a high pressure hydraulic pump, so you have to be. So so we're going to leave a couple threads in each bolt here. We're going to remove the other 2. Like I say, there's no particular, these aren't in any particular order. They're just common grade 5 bolt. I've never had one of these apart before, so I'm a little bit worried here. I think I might have to, I think those other bolts are probably going to have to come out, and I'll have to be very specific in putting them back in order. This pump has to be lined up the way it comes apart. It has to go back the exact same way. Hang on here a second. I'm going to go get a saw face mallet here and give it a couple of taps here just to see if it's stuck down to the body here. I don't think so, because when I loosened it off, there's a little bit of oil starting to weep out. So I think it does come, this plate is supposed to come off from this side without taking the bolts off from the other side. The other side retains all the radial piston plate. So hang on, I'll bring you folks back here in a second as soon as I dig into this a little more. Okay, just a good old rubber mallet here. I gave it a couple of good smacks. Not going to hurt nothing. Obviously, it's a rubber mallet on a heavy cast pump, but as soon as I did, it came up, and sure enough, there's definitely spring tension. It's not horrible, but there's those springs push this plate up to the top of the bolt here. So we're gonna remove these last 2 bolts here, and we only got a few threads holding. There we go. There's be a little bit of fun getting this line back up. Now I got to be very careful when I lift this out. Like I say, there's a piston plunger in there, and this is gonna it will fall as soon as I come on. There we go. Yep. I'll get you folks in here right away, show you here what see, there's one spring, and then the other spring, the smaller spring, and it goes inside. That's what I mean, overlapping springs. And then down in here, oily goodness here, there's it's stuck with the oil now, it's not going to come, but there's a plunger piston in here. There's a plunger piston here. It actually was slowly sliding out when I had it tipped over here. That's your actuator piston in there. Now I see there's all kinds of orifices in here with all kinds of keepers with little snap rings and check balls and you name it or whatever. These are all your relief on this plate here. Here, let me show you. On, like I say, this is your pressure control head here. It's got all your check valves or whatever. On the other one is the main piston pumps. On the main pump body, that's all your pistons, like I said, all the way around. And this is your actuator right in the center here with that spring that I just showed you. And it has all these little for each piston pump, for each piston, there's a individual relief valve. And these are all cartridges that go in here. None of these were leaking, so I'm not going to open these up because that's a whole can of worms. You get into here, I bought an O-ring kit or a reseal kit for this pump, and there's literally, I think 60 some O-rings in through this whole pump here. If you were to take all the piston pumps, all the piston assemblies out and all these check valve assemblies out, there's like, I believe, 3 O-rings per check valve times 8, and then 4, I can't remember if there's 5 or 6 O-rings per piston assembly. When you take those pistons out, they also come apart additionally, and then you have, you know, the plunger and your check valve in there. Well, not a check valve, but like a well, the piston plunger, so to speak, or whatever, and that all has a body inside of a body inside of a body, and then it's O-ring over O-ring over O-ring. So yeah, you goof up one of those, it's not going to pump worth shit, or it won't pump at all, or it just won't work. So unless you absolutely have to, you don't want to mess with that, and I'm not going to. The issue was right over here. Hang on. The issue was right in this in here. There's a square cut O-ring, almost like a oil filter, like on a spin-on oil filter. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. On a spin-on oil filter, you have those square cut quad ring or sealing ring. It's not an O-ring, it's a sealing ring. And this is very much similar to that. It's just like that. They got one in the kit that goes in here. And this is the outer, well, this is your radial, whatchamacallit here, that there's one wash spot I've seen here. I think it's right about here somewhere, where the oil will actually, it was making like spit bubbles out the side of the pump, and then if you pushed it hard where you're working, when I was cutting hay, when you're running the hay bine, I'm lifting and swinging the hay bine from side to side, and there's shock loads on it, well then it would force the oil past this O-ring, or quad ring, or sealing ring, whatever you want to call it. So I got to get a little more into this here. I'm going to clean up, get this oil, I got a little suction gun here. I'm going to evacuate this oil out of here, wipe this down, get this cleaned up, and then here's this O-ring right here. A cutaway down in here, and then there's a lip here for that, for this O-ring here. But you can see this O-ring is almost flat with the pump body, and there's a pretty good recessed whatchamacallit here, so it's not keeping up with what it needs to do. So anyways, bring you back in a minute here. Pull this all apart here, and right in the center here they've got a little stainless steel fine screen to catch any crap that's coming back out of the main system of the tractor. This is where it would feed into here on one of these external ports here. So one's your, this is your, I believe this is your input. This is your input port here, and this is your high pressure external port that feeds all your remote and your steering and, well, complete tractor's pressure system. So anyways, in the center here they've got a little tiny orifice here, like a feeder orifice, I guess, or whatever, and they've got a little catch screen in here. So I took this out. It had just a few little bits of fine particulate in it here. I rinsed it with brake clean and blew it out with the pressure hose here, air hose. So I'll put this back in here. on this plate here, they've got 8 little O-rings all the way around on these holes here. These are all your little feeder ports for your relief valves here from the main piston that feeds off the piston out of the pump's main pressure pistons here into these your check valves or relief valves here in case something goes amiss here. So one of these is leaking. Now I don't know if it was one of these, and they've got a secondary port over here. This is like a pressure return, I guess, type of thing. And I believe this is where it was leaking because the pump was spitting right over here a little bit of oil. So it was either one of these O-rings here in this corresponding plate, but I believe it's this. These are just regular, like a number 90 high pressure hydraulic O-ring. They're all pretty hard and dry, but this one is not a regular O-ring. This is another one of those small square cut O-rings, and I think this is the one that's leaking. So, and it's very hard, and it's right flush and flat with the pump body. So I was looking in my O-ring kit here that came with it, and I found it right here. It's the single one for that for this application right here. So I will be replacing this one, and then I'm going to dig into the kit and pull out all these 8 little O-rings here, and then I have to stick them in place with something. I'm not sure, because this has to go back over this way when you put it on here, and of course they're all going to fall out, and you can't just lay them on here. There's no cutaway in here. The cutaway is in this cover. Same with your square quad ring here that seals there. That like I was saying, it's like a oil filter, square cut oil filter sealing ring. Or it's not really a quad ring, but whatever you want to call it. It's a square cut O-ring, for lack of better terms. So this is what seals the main pressure body here to the pump. So okay, anyways, I'll pause you guys here. I'll be right back in a second here. Well, be back in a second on film, but I'm going to be monking here with this for a bit here. I got to get this cleaned up a little bit better and pull all these old O-rings out to find my new replacement here, and then start getting everything ready. And I don't know if I should, I know technically you're not supposed to use grease on, I got some white lithium grease or whatever. I think it might be okay or whatever to just tack them in place so that I can gently tip this plate back over and set it down on here. I say when I unbolted the last 2, there's 4 bolts holding this back plate on. When I lifted it, pushed itself up to the top of the thread. So it's not a real, this little spring here is not a real, given the weight of this plate here, I can push it down fairly reasonable or easy. So I got to get on with it here. So anyways.